He states the conclusion that he's come to in answer to the big question, is life worth living? He states his answer, and then he begins to tell us why he's come to that conclusion. And his conclusion is life is useless. The older versions of the Bible had the word vanity, but that word has begun to lose its meaning. It's a word meaning emptiness, hollow. The literal Hebrew word means a breath, a wisp of breath. That's a very good description of life, isn't it? You begin to breathe and then you cease. Life is just a breath. It's gone. It's almost a description of going out on a cold winter's morning and seeing your breath come out of your mouth, and you see it come out and then very quickly it disperses and disappears. Life is just a breath. Or perhaps another translation would be, life is just a bubble. A bubble is just a lump of air. Just a bubble. Now, anybody who feels that life is just a bubble ought to read this book. Here's a man who said it's just a bubble. It was a rainbow-colored bubble, and I grasped it and I found it was just a bit of air, nothingness. Frankly, if I'd been translating the Good News Bible, I would have said this: life is pointless. Pointless. That's the real flavor of what he's saying here. It's pointless. You've nothing to show for it at the end. You've nothing left at the end of the day. The moment you die, you draw a line under the accounts and you say, now what have I got left that I can keep? Because that's your profit. What have I got left that I can keep? The answer's nothing. And I've worked so hard, and I've been so busy. It's so pointless. Now what a conclusion. Yet he's writing as an older man, and he says, why have I come to that conclusion? I've come to that conclusion because, he said, everything I see is rushing in circles and getting nowhere. Everything. That's what I've done. He said, life for me has been a treadmill or a roundabout. For some, life is like a roundabout. They get on, they have a great time while they're on. They go round and round and round, and they get off just where they got on. They've lost their money. For others, life isn't a roundabout, it's a treadmill. You get in and you go round and round and round, and you tread your way to the office and back, and it's just a treadmill. But you get off just where you got on. Generations come and generations go, but the world stays just the same. It was there before you came, and it'll be there after you've gone. Is this not facing facts? Isn't this not being utterly honest? And you will have nothing. Ah, but someone will say, and people do say this, they've said it to me, I hope to leave the world a little better than I found it. I hope to leave something for those who come after me. Have you heard that? That's the hope that keeps many people going. They know that when they get to the end of the road, they have nothing to take from this world. Naked they came into it, naked they go out, so they hope to leave something for the people who follow on. Ah, says this man, face life honestly. Do you think you'll be remembered? And for how long? Do you think your little life will really make much difference to this world? Not a bit of it. You have no impression whatever on it. It will carry on without you. The seasons will come and the seasons will go. People will be born and people will die. The world goes on just the same as if you'd never been on it. Hard talking, yes, but it's making people face facts. It's taking them to the logical conclusion of their own thinking. If you have hopes that you're going to leave this world a much happier, better place than you found it, then think again. It'll have just as much war and just as much famine, if not more, after you've gone than before you came. So if you think you're going to change the world, he says, think again. That's not the meaning of life. He said, individual lives are like a piece of paper just thrown into the river, drifting down and then gradually disintegrating and sinking to the bottom, and the river goes on flowing just as it did before. He says, look not only at human life. People are born and die. There was a 90-year-old Christian doctor up in Whitby in Yorkshire, and he was invited to speak to a youth club in which there were some very with-it youngsters, and he gave them a talk for a half an hour on his faith at 90 years of age, and a young girl in a miniskirt got up and said, Dr. Vines, you're old-fashioned, and he said, my dear young lady, you came into the world in an old-fashioned way and you'll go out of it an old-fashioned way. That's what he's saying here. There's nothing new. Look at nature as distinct from human beings. Look at nature. The sun, it starts, let's get orientated, it starts in the east, goes round to the west, then it hurries round underneath to get up in the morning, to come round, then it hurries round underneath and gets up in the morning, just like you. Of course, his astronomy may have been a bit astray, but his observed facts were perfectly correct. And he didn't know about evaporation in those days, but he said all the rivers go into the sea, and the sea's not full, it doesn't overflow. Somehow the water gets back to the beginning, and it flows all over again into the sea, back, round, round, just like me, getting up to go to work and going back to bed. Or look at the wind. Weather forecaster says it's southwest today, and then it's northeast, and then it's southeast, and then it's northwest, and it just goes round and round and round and round in circles. The same amount of air just going round in circles, getting nowhere. Indeed, the whole universe we now know is like this. We're all going in circles, getting nowhere fast. You're moving at 19 miles a second in this moment. Can you feel it? You would if the Lord accelerated or slowed this place down. We'd all finish up stuck to that wall. But you're getting nowhere fast. You're just going round in circles. That's why the sun rose this morning and we'll go to bed tonight, because we're just spinning round, getting nowhere fast, going round and round. And believe you me, after your funeral, it'll be going round. And you will have had no impression on it whatever. So life is pointless. Old Father Thames keeps rolling along. It's been rolling along since the Romans came. The people of London, I read this week, that when they drink water, they're drinking water that has already been drunk 5 times by 5 other people further up the Thames. And old Father Thames keeps rolling along, just the same. What about history? Let's turn, says this philosopher, let's look at history. The eye can never see enough to be satisfied, and the ear can never hear enough. What does he mean? He's saying we're always searching for novelty, for something new. What's the whole package tourist industry doing? Showing people new sights, right? Sightseeing. And the more sights we see, the less satisfied we are. There's another place we haven't been. So we spend our lives sightseeing, going to a different place on holiday, and we never see enough. There's always something newer, we think. And we never hear enough that's new, do we? We pay a fortune for our newspapers. And you know, one Sunday paper is the same as the next. And it takes 9 acres of forest to produce one issue of the New York Times, and there's nothing new in it at all. The wars have shifted from one country to another. The divorces have shifted from one film star to another. But it's nothing new. And they're called newspapers. And the ear can never hear enough. Sorry, Brian, I just caught sight of you. I don't want to put you out of business in that shop. But you've seen it all, haven't you? You see it every day. The headlines, do they really change? Does the world really change? But we avidly read what we dare to call the news. It's as old as the hills. The only reason we think it's new is because we don't remember when it happened previously. Is this not true? History repeats itself is one of the favorite proverbs we have. Leon Uris, who became famous for writing the novel The Exodus, that story of how the Jews got back into Israel through the British blockade, has written another novel about the Irish. It's been at the top bestsellers, top of the list of bestsellers in America for 4 months. 716 pages of overwritten something or other. And at the very end of this account of Ireland, of its history over 300 or 400 years, magnificent survey of history, this is his final conclusion. There is no future for Ireland, only the past happening over and over again. That's his conclusion. There is no future, only the past happening over and over again. And that was said in a book 3,000 years ago. Life is pointless. We're getting nowhere fast, going round in circles. History is going round in circles. Time magazine this week was reviewing a book on church history, and in it the reviewer talked about what he called contemporary resonances. He said, if you think there's anything new in church history, it's all happened before. And he showed how it all had. He said, do you think hippies invading a church is something new? And he quotes something from the Middle Ages. He said, do you think the Lockheed bribes are something new? Look how the bishops established doctrine in certain countries of the world in the Dark Ages. And so he goes on. He just said there's nothing new. I'm not much good at French, and I can't really pronounce this, but do you know the French proverb, plus ça change, plus c'est la même chose? What's it mean? The more things change, the more they turn out to be the same. Apologies to all French-speaking people in the congregation. I can say it better in English. The more things change, the more they turn out to be just the same. Well, now, that's a pretty negative way to begin. Okay, so it's negative. It's true. It's where you've got to start if you're going to be honest about life. Now, the people I find who argue about this conclusion are those who are young, those who are ambitious, those who are quite sure they can make a mark on life, but it's not often that I find older people arguing with this conclusion. I'm speaking now about older people who have not found the answer to the question. And they would say, yes, that describes how I feel. Men in their 50s have come to me and said, looking back on my working life, I cannot answer the question, what have I achieved? What have I achieved? When I retire and get my gold watch and go, I won't be missed. Everything will carry on exactly as it was before. That's life. That's life. For a man who's honest. The Bible shows here that you can go down path after path to the very end and you'll still come to a notice. No way. No way. The trouble is many people don't even think this far. Jesus criticized such people. He said, you're a fool if you only think in terms of what you can achieve in this life. You're a fool because this very night you'll be told to add up the accounts, and you will have nothing to show for it, no profit. What shall it profit you if you've lived within this circumscribed framework under the sun, and as long as I live? And if you've tried to make life worth living within that framework, you are doomed to disappointment. Will you learn from an old man? You willing to see this book of Ecclesiastes as a warning sign? Are you willing to listen to an old man speaking the truth about all the very things that some of you young people are trying, hoping that they'll bring you real life? If you're willing to learn, then you could learn a much more positive thing. That's why the old man writes to the young men. That's why he says, remember your Creator in the days of your youth, before the years come when it's too late. Find God now, and you'll find life now. He's saying, I went all that way, and I couldn't get life related to God. And the result was, at the end of life, my conclusion was, my life has been pointless. I've been going in circles, getting nowhere fast. I want to finish by quoting Jesus and a man called Paul. Let me begin with Paul, a Jew from Tarsus, Saul, his original name was. And Paul once said this, he was as honest with the facts as Ecclesiastes, and he agrees perfectly with what Ecclesiastes says. Listen, he says in Romans 8, the whole universe has been subject to vanity, to futility. Same word. The whole universe has been subject to this. Why? Because human beings are not fit to live. And it means, therefore, that God has built this into our universe now, that the whole thing is going in circles. Everything is futile. Everything is vanity. Everything is pointless. Everything is going round and round and getting nowhere fast. And it's God who did that to our universe. It wasn't like that in the beginning. When God made the universe, it was going somewhere. It was going in a line, not in circles. But it is God who has built in this futility to everything. Why? Because we are not yet fit to travel the road that leads to Him. And so the whole creation is subject to futility, waiting for what? Waiting for our redemption. Waiting for something to get put right in us. Waiting for us to be fit to live in the world. And then God will make the world fit to live in, and will create a new heaven and a new earth. And the new heaven and the new earth will not be going in circles, be traveling in a straight line. Now, do you get the big cosmic concept here? You're beginning to get the overview? Do you see the thing whole? life is useless, pointless, circular. It's getting nowhere fast, and your little life on this planet is doing exactly the same thing. And don't kid yourself, you're going to leave this world better than you found it. It's going to go on just as it was after you're gone. You've got to find out a purpose for yourself. And you will find it by reaching above the sun. And you'll find it by reaching beyond this life. And it's only when you reach out in space and forward in time, beyond the limits that our scientific world has imposed on our thinking. For our scientific and technological era teaches us to live within that frame. No wonder that in that technological era, art and drama and music are all saying life is meaningless. No wonder our culture is crying out in despair. No wonder we're getting sick humor. No wonder plays are coming out with no point, with no story. They are saying there is no point, there is no meaning. But the writer of this book did not take that position. He said there must be a meaning, and I believe there's a God who knows that meaning. I just haven't been able to get through to him and find it out. But the Christian is someone who can say, I have got through and I've discovered the answer. God did have a meaning, and he did have a purpose, and now I know it. And that's why a Christian could never write the book of Ecclesiastes. Not unless he wrote it before he became a Christian and was a very honest man who was willing to face facts. So look at some of the other things Paul said. He said a Christian lives not below the sun. He lives in the heavenlies with Jesus, and life there is glorious. A Christian is actually living above the sun. Not under it, but above it. And he's basking in something much better than sunshine. It's a glorious life to live in the heavenlies. And you know, if you're not a Christian, you won't understand a word of what I've just said. You'll think I've gone crazy. But every Christian here knows, according to Colossians, which we're studying on Sunday mornings, that our life is hid with Christ in God. Therefore, if you're risen with Christ, seek the things that are above, where he is. And you are. That's where your life is. You're living above the sun, not under it. Furthermore, we are not living in a life that's bounded by birth and death. We are already living eternal life that stretches through the grave and cannot be touched by death. So already there's a dimension that gives meaning and purpose, and every action of mine today and tomorrow is going to count and going to leave its mark and will be remembered by God and by me. And that has given a whole dimension to life. I've got out of the circle and I'm now traveling a line. Or as a pop song in my youth, and this will date me, as a pop song in my youth, when I know where I'm going and I know who goes with me. Do you remember that song? Right, you're as old as I am, but I know where I'm going, they used to sing. You never hear a pop song that says that now, do you? Songs now are just despair, trying to snatch a little bit of love now, because who knows? Eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. That's the conclusion he came to as well. If you don't know where you're going, then enjoy where you are as much as you can. That's all you can do. And that's sense. But now come back to Jesus. Jesus not only said, you fool, to a man who didn't think beyond the parameters of this world. Jesus also said, this is life. To know you, God, and to know Jesus, whom you sent. This is life. And if you read the teaching of Jesus, he relates life here and now to the world above the sun and the world beyond the grave. And once you get those dimensions into your thinking, you've found the answer that this man never did. And you say, life pointless? It has only got point now. I never saw the point of it before. While I was rushing around that roundabout. Now I'm off the roundabout and I'm a pilgrim and I'm going somewhere. And I know where I'm going and I know who goes with me. Dr. Pawson, that great preacher, once said this. The key to Ecclesiastes is that a man is too big for this world. Do you understand what he was saying? You cut life off at the level of the sun, and at the point of time, the grave. And you are too big to fit into that box. You stretch beyond it. You're cribbed, cabined, and confined within it, and you can't spread your wings. You can't live within that box. You may try, and you may kid yourself for years that you're having a great life, but I warn you that you will get to the point where you say, of whatever the scene has been, it's useless. Promises, promises. And then maybe you'll remember that a preacher once said that if you looked above the sun and saw God, if you looked beyond the grave and saw Jesus preparing another life for you, you would see that life here is a preparation, a pilgrimage. It's leading somewhere. It's not leading to 6 foot under. It's leading to glory. And once you see that, why, Monday morning becomes a different day. Life is going somewhere. You know, this is death to the philosophy of evolution. And it's death to the optimistic humanists. That's why they hate this conclusion life is useless and won't face it. Those who believe that we're automatically, the whole world is evolving and getting somewhere, rubbish. It's getting nowhere, and God subjected it to that futility. We're not evolving anywhere. And I think in this last quarter of the 20th century, he's a bold man who would say the world today is a better day than when Ecclesiastes was written. Wouldn't he? Are there fewer wars? Is there less suffering? Can men get on with each other any better? It's just the same. And so Ecclesiastes picks us up by knocking us down. He says, follow your own thinking to its logical limit until you've realized that life is pointless. Then you are ready to listen to another preacher called Jesus, who came to lift us above the sun and to give us life beyond the grave, so that we could say life is useful. There is a point